You just spent $12 on a salad. A salad! Not even a good salad, one of those build-your-own situations where you picked 6 ingredients and somehow ended up paying more than you would for an actual sit-down meal at a restaurant. And as you're walking out with your overpriced bowl of lettuce, you're thinking, that felt expensive. But here's the weird part. Last week, you dropped $60 on a streaming service annual subscription without even blinking. You didn't feel anything. You just clicked confirm and moved on with your day. Same money, completely different emotional response. And that difference, that's not an accident. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry built on understanding your brain better than you do. My name is Minted Finance, and I spend way too much time thinking about how companies manipulate our perception of value to make us spend more while feeling like we're spending less. If you're someone who constantly feels broke, even though you can't figure out where all your money actually goes, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up because we're about to break down the psychological tricks that make cheap things feel expensive and expensive things feel cheap, and how understanding this can literally save you thousands of dollars a year. Here's the thing. Price and value are not the same thing, but our brains treat them like they are. And companies have spent decades figuring out exactly how to exploit that confusion. They've learned that how much something costs matters way less than how much it feels like it costs. And the gap between those two things, that's where they make their money. Let me show you what I mean. There's this concept in behavioral economics called pain of paying. It's exactly what it sounds like. The psychological discomfort we feel when we spend money. And here's what most people don't realize. The pain of paying has almost nothing to do with the actual amount of money leaving your wallet. It has everything to do with how aware you are of that money leaving your wallet. Researchers at MIT did this experiment where they had people bid on basketball tickets. Half the group had to pay with cash, half could pay with credit card. The credit card group bid on average 83% more for the exact same tickets. Same product, same people, just a different payment method. And suddenly, everyone's willing to pay almost double. Why? Because cash is painful. You physically hand it over. You see your wallet get thinner. Your brain registers a loss. But a credit card? That's just a piece of plastic you wave around. There's no immediate loss. The pain is delayed, abstract, disconnected from the purchase. So your brain doesn't register it the same way. Now look, you already know this at some level. You've probably experienced it. But what you might not realize is how aggressively companies are using this against you. That $12 salad, you paid with your credit card, right? So it should have felt painless. But it didn't. It felt expensive. Meanwhile, that $60 streaming subscription that auto-renewed last week, you barely noticed. This is where it gets interesting. Companies have figured out that the pain of paying isn't just about payment method. It's about a whole bunch of psychological factors they can control. And they've gotten really, really good at manipulating every single one of them. First, there's what behavioral economists call temporal separation. The gap between when you commit to a purchase and when you actually pay for it. The bigger that gap, the less pain you feel. This is why subscription services feel so cheap. You're not buying Netflix for $160 a year, you're buying it for $13.99 a month, and that payment happens automatically in the background while you're asleep or at work or doing literally anything except thinking about Netflix. Your brain never connects the payment to the service because they happen at completely different times. You enjoy Netflix on Tuesday night, the charge hits your account on the 15th of the month. There's no relationship between those events in your mind. No pain of pain, just vague awareness that Netflix exists and costs some amount of money that you can't quite remember. But that salad, you ordered it, paid for it, and received it all within about 90 seconds. The entire transaction happened right there in front of you. Your brain absolutely registered that $12 leaving your account because the cause and effect were immediate and obvious. You handed over money, you got salad. The connection is clear-cut, and that clarity creates pain. Here's what's insane about this. According to a study by the Progressive Policy Institute, the average household spends about $640 per month on subscription services. That's $7,680 a year. But if you ask most people how much they spend on subscriptions, they'll underestimate by 50 to 80%. They genuinely have no idea. The temporal separation has completely disconnected the spending from the awareness. Now you might be thinking, okay, Minted Finance, but subscriptions provide value. I use those services. And sure, maybe you do, but let's be honest, you definitely don't use all of them. Research from West Monroe found that people forget about 29% of their subscription payments. Just completely forget they exist. That's $200 a year on average spent on services you don't even remember having. But nobody forgets about the $12 salad. Nobody ever says, wait, did I buy lunch today? I can't remember. The salad feels expensive because you were present for the transaction. The subscription feels cheap because you've divorced the payment from the consumption. And companies know this. This is why everything is moving to subscription models. Adobe used to sell Photoshop for $700. You paid once, you owned it forever. It felt expensive because it was expensive, and you had to consciously decide to spend $700 all at once. Now they charge you $23 a month. Over 3 years, that's $828. You're paying more, and it feels like less because the pain is spread out and automated. But the temporal separation is just one piece of this. There's also something called transaction decoupling. This is when companies separate the act of paying from the act of consuming. And it's absolutely everywhere once you start noticing it. Think about an all-inclusive resort. You pay $3,000 upfront for a week-long vacation. Then, when you're at the resort, everything feels free. Drinks free, food free, activities free. Your brain isn't registering any cost because you're not pulling out your wallet. The payment happened in the past. Now you're just consuming. The transaction is decoupled from the experience. This is the exact same psychological trick that makes gift cards so profitable. When you buy a $50 gift card, you feel the pain of spending $50. But when you use that gift card, you don't feel like you're spending money at all. You're spending gift card. It's already paid for. It's already gone. So people with gift cards spend on average 38% more than people paying with their own money, according to research from First Data, because psychologically, it doesn't count. Now look, the most aggressive version of this is something you probably interact with constantly without realizing it. Digital wallets and stored payment information. Amazon's one-click ordering, Apple Pay, Google Pay, your credit card saved in every app and website. These feel convenient, and they are convenient, but they're also psychological weapons designed to eliminate the pain of paying. When you have to pull out your credit card, type in the numbers, type in your address, type in your security code, you have time to think. You have friction. You have a moment where your brain might say, hey, do we really need this? But one-click ordering removes all of that. The decision to buy and the act of buying happens simultaneously. There's no gap for regret or reconsideration. And the data on this is genuinely scary. According to a study by Slick Deals, the average person makes around 3 impulse purchases per week, spending $155 monthly on stuff they didn't plan to buy. That's $1,860 a year, and the easier the payment process, the higher that number goes. Amazon Prime members spend on average $1,400 on the platform. Non-Prime members spend about $600. Same stuff available, but Prime members have faster shipping and easier checkout, so they spend almost double. Here's where it gets interesting. Companies aren't just trying to reduce the pain of paying. They're actively trying to increase the pain of paying for competing products. This is why cheap things feel expensive, because companies that sell expensive things want them to feel that way. Let me explain. You know how when you buy coffee at a regular coffee shop, you just pay and leave? But when you buy coffee at Starbucks, they ask for your name, write it on the cup, call it out when it's ready, make this whole production out of it. That's not about efficiency. That's about creating what marketers call ritual consumption. They're making you more aware of the transaction, more present in the moment, more connected to the act of buying coffee. And you know what that does? It makes you value it more. When something feels like an experience, when there's ceremony around it, your brain assigns it higher value. A $5 Starbucks coffee feels worth $5 because of all the theater surrounding it. A $2 bodega coffee feels expensive because you're just handed a cup with zero fanfare. Same caffeine, completely different psychological experience. This is why luxury brands make you wait, why there are velvet ropes and appointment-only shopping and limited releases. They're not trying to reduce the pain of paying. They're trying to increase the perceived value by making the transaction feel special, exclusive, important. And it works. People will spend $10,000 on a handbag and feel great about it because the entire purchasing experience was designed to make them feel like they're part of something elite. Meanwhile, you'll spend $5 on a sandwich at a deli and feel like you got ripped off because the guy behind the counter barely looked at you while he made it. Now you might be thinking, okay, so companies manipulate how things feel. So what? I still need to buy stuff. And you're right, but here's what most people don't realize. Once you understand these psychological tricks, you can use them in reverse. You can make expensive things feel cheap and cheap things feel valuable. And that shift in perception changes your entire relationship with money. Let me give you an example. You need to buy a new laptop. It costs $1,000. That feels like a lot of money, right? Your brain is screaming that $1,000 is expensive. But here's the thing. If you use that laptop for work every day for 4 years, that's about $68 per day. Suddenly, it doesn't feel expensive at all. It feels like a bargain. This is called unit cost reframing, and it's one of the most powerful tools you can use to make smart financial decisions. Instead of looking at the total price, look at the cost per use. That $3,000 couch that you'll sit on every single day for the next decade, that's $82 per day.